Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to the Some Dare Call It Conspiracy podcast, hosted by Brent Lee and Neil Sanders. After nearly 20 years exploring the world of conspiracy culture, we are taking our guests and listeners on a guided tour of the rabbit hole. Our mission? To discover where the truth lies.
So I've been watching Ickonic because I'm a bit of a masochist, and recently they had what has been described as one of their most successful videos ever. This really sort of lit a spark in the audience. If you look at the comments underneath it on the video, it's just full of praise. People saying that this was the most insightful, spiritually enlightening, and factually sort of enlightening talk that they'd heard in ages. And Gareth Icke, who is God's grandson, obviously, he interviews somebody called Coco Sean Ryder. And previous to this, I had no idea who this person was. Did you have any idea who this person was, Brent?
I had no inkling whatsoever.
Well, I mean, the title of the show or the interview is Music Industry Rituals, MK Ultra and the 27 Club Secrets with Coco Sean Ryder. So we'll just let Gareth explain what is happening here. So Gareth starts by saying, hello and welcome to a special episode of Gareth Tonight. In a break from our normal format, I'm going to be sitting down with one guest for a long form interview. Tonight, I'm joined by Coco Sean Ryder. Coco is about as genetically connected to the UK music industry as you can get. Her grandfather is Scottish singer Donovan. Her father is Sean Ryder of the Happy Mondays, and her uncle is the son of Rolling Stones founding member Brian Jones. Her family also connects into Freemasonry and the British royal family, which has led her to delve deep into the connections between the elite bloodlines and the music industry. It promises to be a fascinating conversation. Coco, thank you so much for joining us. What was it like growing up, not only connected to one legendary music icon, but essentially three? And so I think we're in for a treat, because I saw this and I thought, whoopee, Satanic Music Industry. We've finally got an opportunity to do that. And right. As this woman, and as Garth says, her father is Sean Ryder of the Happy Mondays. Her grandfather is Donovan, the folk singer. And her uncle is the son of Brian Jones, who was the original guitar player from the Rolling Stones. So, as Garth says, she is about as genetically connected to the music industry as you can get. What do you think about that, Brent?
Well, it made me laugh straight away. I'm kind of sold because of the appeal to authority. Mm-hmm. That they've laid out straight out the gate. Mm-hmm. But to be honest, it did make me laugh. And the first thing I thought was, well, I'm genetically linked to the US military. So I know everything about the US government.
Now you've said that will be all over the message boards. Like, not only not only were they on the BBC, but he's connected to the military. But yes, this is what I thought as well. Like, my one was like, oh, well, I'm then therefore an expert on the education industry, because not only was my mum a teacher, but I also went to school. So there's nothing that you can teach me about any aspect of that is a secret to me. So, it's just an open book.
I was really hoping you were going to say your mum was a dinner lady.
No, she's a CBT teacher. She was actually a really good teacher, actually. So, in fact, at her house there's a load of furniture, and you wouldn't know it, but she's made it. It's all brilliant stuff. So, there you go. And that's why I'm also an expert on carpentry and stuff like that. I'm genetically connected to it. So there's no getting out of it. The other way of thinking it is that, I have a friend that's a head chef, and I have also eaten in restaurants. By their logic, we could now do an hour or two about being experts about the restaurant industry, because we're genetically connected to it. There it goes. So Anyway, so Coco Sean Ryder, is she genetically connected to the music industry? Kind of. I mean, she's got an estranged father, and her grandfather is a famous musician. Now, there's going to be some contradictions as this goes on, but we will sort of explain and unpick it. But let's delve a little bit into Coco's background. The Manchester Evening News in 2004, under the headline "Unhappy Mondays," which is, clever. She was the privileged daughter of mellow 60s troubadour Donovan, and he was the hedonistic anti-hero of the Manchester era. Together, Oriole Leach and Sean Ryder made beautiful music, sharing the thrills and spills of life on the road with the wildest musicians this city has ever produced. But when their heated love affair was inevitably soured by Ryder's well-documented excesses, Oriole was quite literally left holding the baby. And now, in an amazingly frank and emotional appeal, Oriole has urged the former Happy Mondays frontman to play a part in the life of 9-year-old Coco, the daughter he has not made contact with for more than 3 years. Her voice shaking, Oriole, 30, says, I think I'm pronouncing that right, it's an Irish name, so God knows. Coco was really young when we split up, just turning 6, but she still remembers her daddy as a wonderful person. We talk about him a lot because I don't want her thinking he doesn't want her or care about her. I have an understanding with her that she knows his situation, that he has a lifelong history of drug addiction, and that he's like a child, but that he still cares about her. Basically, I just try to keep it as positive and light as possible. She cries about him sometimes, and she's old enough now to have contact with him to a certain extent, which is why we're trying to reach out. She just wants to tell him that she loves him. And so this is obviously tragic that Oriole is Donovan's daughter, and that is Coco's mother. And how she met Sean Ryder was because her sister Estrella was living and was the partner of Paul Ryder, who was I forget whether he's the bass player or the guitar player, but he was also a member of the Happy Mondays, obviously Sean Ryder's brother. I learned a lot about people from Sean and living in Manchester. It wasn't exactly happy. Money was tight and there were problems. We only stayed together so long because the sex was so good. I'm glad that she's put that there so that her daughter can read that later in life. The pregnancy wasn't planned, but I love my daughter and I'm very glad to have a child with Sean. Unfortunately, I just wish he hadn't had so many problems. The day Oriole went into labour with Coco was typically chaotic, she says. He didn't make the actual birth. His friend had just got out of jail and they had celebrated the night before. I had to carry Sean and my bag down the stairs. So in 2013, the Daily Star did a story called Happy Monday Sean Ryder, Not Such a Perfect Dad. She insisted he is a woman-beating addict who smoked heroin while looking after her as a child. Coco, 18, one of Ryder's 6 children by 4 women, has not seen her dad since he walked out on her mother when she was 5, leaving them broke and homeless. She said, he would scream, and I remember windows being smashed. I have flashbacks. I remember this feeling of panic, of just wanting him to stop. I don't want a relationship with him, but it would be nice if he could just say sorry. Legendary drug user Ryder spoke to a national newspaper recently, calling himself a great dad and saying his children all loved him. Coco said, when I saw that, I just shrugged. It's been difficult to read, but I have certain numbness where he's concerned. He left when I was 5, and for years, I constantly asked where my daddy was. I stopped at about 10. And so, and I don't wish to be cruel, okay, but she's very much estranged from her father. Nothing, that's not her fault, and it's obviously a tragic situation. But I don't see how that immediately gives her an insight into the industry. However, she has mostly lived with Donovan, her grandfather. And in 2017, the Irish Independent ran a story saying how Donovan and Coco, his granddaughter, caught their wind. Holding a joint art and photography exhibition with your grandfather is an unusual thing to do by anyone's standards. But then again, folk singer-songwriter Donovan, 70, and his granddaughter Coco Sean, 22, are far from ordinary people. Then there's Coco, whose famous dad is Sean Ryder of the Happy Mondays. His relationship with her mum, Oriole, ended when she was 5. As a result, her grandfather, Donovan, has become a strong father figure in her life, along with her brother, Sebastian, who is 3 years older than her. The Beginning, Iridescence, which opens this week at Origin Gallery in Dublin. Her paintings are full of colour and life with loads of movement in them, and she's excited to see how they will be received. Art is a common bond with Coco and her grandfather, and she says that they both have a desire to understand themselves and humanity through creativity. There is an esoteric, spiritual inner meaning behind his music, and it's the same for my artwork, she says. As she gets into her early 20s, she's still not in touch with Sean Ryder, but she is living with her grandfather, or certainly in very strong contact with him. And he seems to be a very positive force, and they've put on art exhibitions together. So she's clearly quite an accomplished artist, by the sounds of it, a photographer as well, got that creative bug in her. And it sounds like through Donovan, she seems to have had some sort of opportunity to express that and to sort of try it out in the public, which is great. In 2020, Music News wrote, Donovan has urged Sean Ryder to make peace with his estranged daughter. Donovan has urged Happy Monday star Sean Ryder to make peace with his estranged daughter. She's an incredible artist, not only a patron sculptor, but a performance artist, which makes sense being Sean's daughter. They've been estranged, but at one point they'll get together. I'd like Sean to meet his daughter again and for them to realize that they're part of the same journey. So this, and some of us who are familiar with our work might see the foreshadowing here. But one thing that we could definitely say about Coco is that she's very, very creative. She's got all of these creative outlets that she's trying. And evidently she's one of these people that seems to be quite good at turning her hand to various disciplines, shall we say, painting, sculpting, performance artists, which I'm sure there's an element of acting. I'm sure she said at one point in other interviews that she's dallied with music and such like that as well. And she's been surrounded by all these people. So it would make sense that she has a creative bent, shall we say. So anyway, Coco says, I'm definitely interesting. I definitely had a unique life, a strange life. I traveled a lot, changed school a lot, changed country a lot, changed house a lot. I didn't have such a crazy life like how my mother and siblings did. And, growing up really in the entertainment sphere and on the music industry scene and stuff like that. So I had a more safe and isolated life growing up in the countryside of Spain and Ireland and stuff like that. I did have some strange exposure when I lived in LA for a couple of years as a kid. But no, it was in general very interesting, surrounded by a lot of creativity and music. So Garth says, I wonder about that. What was your childhood like in that sense then? Was it, because I could just imagine just like people just sat around, guitars everywhere, and like you say, all this creativity everywhere. Coco says, I think that was more my mother's experience when her parents, Linda and Donovan, were living in California in the desert. And they used to have a lot of artists around, a lot of people around. They used to just throw parties all the time. And for me, it was more like my grandfather was the one in the house playing music around the fire and stuff like that. And it was more to do with the family, more close and intimate, rather than just having a lot of crazy people around and a lot of artists around. So the creativity really just came from my immediate family, rather than being immersed into the music world. And I thought, oh, well, that's boring. Because isn't this whole point that she's immersed in this thing? And so immediately within the first question, she said, I don't really know anything about it because I don't really live in that. Now, some might say that undermines it. But Garth doesn't mind. He's cracking on.
Garth.
Well, I'm calling him Garth because, he's a side character. Anyway, he's even in his own life, he's very much the secondary character. But we'll come on to that later. So who is Sean Ryder? This is Coco's dad. Sean William George Ryder, born 23rd of August 1962, is an English singer and lead singer of the Happy Mondays. He was a leading figure in the Manchester cultural scene during the late 80s and early 90s, when the Manchester was where Manchester became for a short time due to factory records and a lot of bands in that era that were mixing together guitar music and sometimes dance, also with the influx of ecstasy as a party drug. Connected to the Hacienda, which was a nightclub. All of these things came together. Fashion came out of it. Baggy clothes, Joe Bloggs jeans, that sort of thing, certain haircuts, certain styles. It became known as Manchester because it was mad for it. Manchester. Yes, exactly. Now, a very good film about the whole thing was 24 Hour Party People with Steve Coogan. So that tells the story of Factory Records and, to a lesser extent, the Happy Mondays. The other thing the Happy Mondays are known for is Bez. Bez is their drugged up friend who would dance on stage in order to get the audience going. So he and he's become like he's become a thing now, hasn't he? Is it an adjective? Because you're just a Bez. You're just somewhere there to get the crowd going. You're not really a member of the band, which is pretty cool. Also, people might know Sean Ryder. He's the the disembodied head that says it's coming up on the Gorillaz single Dare, which actually went to #1 in the UK singles charts in 2005. So, do you know what the first Happy Mondays album was called?
No.
It was called Squirrel and the G-Man, 24 Hour Party People, Plastic Face Can't Smile, White Out.
Oh.
Obviously.
Cool.
And that came out in 1987. The one that most people are, although that does have 24 Hour Party People on that album. The two albums that people are most sort of familiar with probably are Bummed, that came out in 1988, and Pills, Thrills and Bellyaches, which came out in 1990. It was followed by Yes Please in 1992, and then much later Uncle Dysfunctional in 2007. Now, Tony Wilson, who was the founder of Factory Records, claimed that he signed the Happy Mondays after seeing them come last in a battle of the bands, during which time they had a fight on stage. But this is actually probably not true. I think they got signed far more sort of just through a process of being watched and sending demos in and stuff like that. So that's probably a myth. But one thing that is definitely not a myth is how the Happy Mondays bankrupted Factory Records by doing an enormous amount of drugs. And this is, I forget which, I think this is from Mixmag. In order to protect their assets, Factory Records decided the best plan to mitigate issues going into the recording of their fourth album would be to stow the band away on a Caribbean island, free of the heroin that had begun to besiege Sean Ryder's life. At this point, Sean Ryder was heavily in the grip of a heroin addiction. They'd got him onto methadone, and the idea was, we need an album. We really need an album because Factory's struggling at the minute as a record company, mostly due to spending a huge amount of money on drugs and frivolous expenses and just, hedonism, essentially. So they decided we'll send him to this particular island in the Caribbean. Unfortunately, he dropped all of his methadone in the airport before they'd even got on the plane, and methadone comes in glass bottles, so it all broke, and he basically lost his entire stash of methadone before he'd even got onto the plane. Now, luckily, this particular island that they were recording on in the Caribbean, there was no heroin there. There just simply wasn't any heroin. There was no way to get it to the island. There was a fuck ton of crack, though, more crack than you could shake a stick at. And so basically what happened was the Happy Mondays arrived at Eddie Grant, a famous reggae star, his Blue Wave studio in Barbados with all the right intentions. Late Factory Records manager Tony Wilson felt assured by the optimism going into the recording, only to be informed that within 48 hours of the arrival, that Ryder had started racking up 50 rocks of crack per day. Wilson had also made the disastrous decision to give them a hefty per diem, thinking that it would go towards the record, and seeing as though drugs weren't a problem in the Caribbean, they'd have a tough time squandering it. However, once he'd heard about the spiraling crack problem, he chartered a flight straight over, and as his plane was coming to land, he witnessed Ryder and Bez wheeling a sofa down the street, apparently to sell it for binge funds. Sofas were the least of Wilson's worries. He soon found out that the band had begun selling Grant's recording equipment and had crafted a makeshift crack den out of sun loungers in his swimming pool. There might have been no heroin on the island, but as Wilson later remarked, but no one told us it was Crack City. adding, "The day we pulled the recording because it completely collapsed due to crack, a person from the band was stopped at 1 a.m. with the back fire doors of the studio open. He was taking 2 sofas out of Eddie Grant's studio to take them down to the town to sell them for crack." As if the burgeoning crack issue hadn't hindered the album enough, Bez later overturned a hired Jeep and was fortunate enough to escape with merely a broken arm that nevertheless halved his maraca shaking capabilities. Right. Ryder was suffering from substance-induced writer's block after splurging hundreds of thousands and in the process leaving a small crack epidemic on the island in their wake. They returned to the UK with unusable recordings with no vocals and a heavily hindered sonic fidelity, owing to the rapidly diminishing equipment available to them in the recording studio. Ryder held firm on these master tapes. Nonetheless, he threatened to destroy them if he wasn't given some money. But although he was happy to eventually settle for £50 that he was offered. And so he turned up in a pub with a drug dealer and possibly a gun, depending on who you think, with the masters, and threatened to hold them hostage, but eventually sold them back to Factory Records for 50 quid. But there weren't any vocals on them, and it was all incomplete anyway.
Something I do know about Sean Ryder is that he was the only person ever named to be banned from live television in England
because of TFI Friday.
Yeah,
there was 2 famous events. TFI Friday was a bit of a cultural phenomenon. It was on a Friday afternoon when we were at school, and it was the thing that you would watch before you went out. And Chris Evans was the host, and it really tapped into the sort of youth zeitgeist. It was a bit like The Word, only more sanitized. It did have bands like The Word and interviews, and it was trying to be outrageous. Sean Ryder did 2 things. One, he did a Sex Pistols tribute. We were supposed to do Pretty Vacant, but he just sort of collapsed into screaming "fuck" and over again, didn't he? And
13 times.
13 times was it? Marvelous.
Yes.
The second time I remember he was doing an interview with Chris Evans, and Chris Evans literally took off his shoes and said, "I will give you my shoes if you can go through this entire interview without swearing." To which Sean Ryder went, "Patrick Cox, they're fucking good shoes." And after that, TFI Friday was no longer allowed to be broadcast live.
Nope, they had to pre-record everything.
Yeah.
Great.
Hey,
but it got overturned in 2015.
Oh, did it? Oh, right.
Yeah.
Fair enough. But yeah, that's Sean Ryder. Bit of a character. But who is Donovan? Donovan Phillips Leach, born May 10th, 1946, known simply as Donovan. He's a Scottish musician, songwriter, and record producer. He emerged from the British folk scene in early 1965 and subsequently scored numerous international hit singles and albums during the late 1960s. His work became emblematic of the flower power era with its blend of folk, pop, psychedelia, and jazz stylings. So Donovan's greatest hits include singles like Sunshine Superman, Mellow Yellow, which is the one that I know. You know, they call me Mellow Yellow.
Right. Right. I'm not hot on Donovan. I don't have a clue, but I do know that song. Yeah,
well, this is the thing. Like, he's one of these people where he was really, really influential. Other songs, Jennifer Juniper, Hurdy-Gurdy Man, Catch the Wind, Season of the Witch, and There Is a Mountain. Sunshine Superman was another one, and Where Your Love Like Heaven. Now, you might have spotted, seeing as, hang on, this is a Satanic Illuminati Music Industry. Like, we're looking for symbolism and stuff like that. Well, sometimes it depends. Because you might have noticed that Donovan's got a song called The Season of the Witch. Now, usually people would be jumping on that like a dog on hot chips and saying, hang on, that mentions witches. That's obviously about witches or some shit. That's the Illuminati. So, Season of the Witch is actually a song about paranoia, specifically the infiltration of hard drugs into the burgeoning 1960s rock and folk scenes, which Donovan felt was a threat to the era's freedoms. The title of the lyrics, they're not literal. They're a metaphor for a darker, more repressive force encroaching on the counterculture, which Donovan saw as a season of the witch, when authorities cracked down and paranoia grew. Also, it was somewhat prophetic, as Donovan was one of the first musicians to be arrested for smoking marijuana in the UK. But usually, Season of the Witch would be something that people would be picking at and going, oh, look at these themes. This is dark.
Or just the fact that was famous. Like,
this is something that we're going to come on to, basically, because he was not only famous, but he was bloody famous. He was friends with people like Joan Baez. He was friends with Brian Jones of the Rolling Stones. That's how he came to essentially adopt Brian Jones's son after Brian Jones's death.
Okay.
He was friends with the Beatles. He taught John Lennon how to fingerpick on guitar.
Shit.
Yeah. So Lennon and McCartney, he also showed McCartney how to do it, and Lennon employed this on Dear Prudence, Happiness is a Warm Gun, and Julia. Also McCartney used it on Blackbird, and they were taught that by Donovan. Do you want to know who his backing musicians were in his early years?
I already know this one.
Well, the young gentlemen were Jeff Beck, John Bonham, Jimmy Page, and John Paul Jones.
Led Zeppelin.
Fucking Led Zeppelin. So this guy's got Led Zeppelin as his session musicians before they were Led Zeppelin, and Jeff Beck playing session music stuff for him before.
That's crazy.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Friends with the Beatles. Now, in other times, that might be seen as suspicious. It isn't. Of course, it makes sense. You're in the industry, you know these people, like that's who your sort of circles are. But normally that would be, you know the Beatles, you know the Rolling Stones, you know Led Zeppelin. People would be talking about he's a gatekeeper that does songs about witches and shit like that. Strangely, Garth and Coco don't seem to have spotted this, or don't seem to think that this is relevant in any way. In 1996, Donovan recorded the album Sutras. Do you want to have a guess who was the producer of this album? This is another one that 9 times out of 10 people would go, oh, well, that means he's in the Illuminati.
Rick Rubin?
Fucking Rick Rubin.
Damn.
Yeah. Now, Rick Rubin is considered suspicious by some in the music industry, principally because he produced Rain in Blood, which is and South of Heaven, which are albums by Slayer. Slayer. A lot of people think that they're satanic because there's a goat on the front of Rain in Blood, and South of Heaven means hell or earth or the sky, maybe. Anyway, it's seen as satanic. He also produced Run DMC. What was Run DMC's like? Raising Hell. Yeah, there you go. So this ties into with that idea. LL Cool J, Public Enemy, and the Beastie Boys. And so again, depending on how, and it will get very, very silly as this series goes on. The Beastie Boys are seen by some as basically spreading, depends who you speak to, diluting hip hop and soulful hip hop, but promoting sort of frat culture and sexism and that sort of party rock type thing. Public Enemy are militant. LL Cool J is sometimes seen as promoting sex, and apparently sex is a bad and satanic thing. But anyway, so Rick Rubin is believed by some, because of the people that he's interacted with, to be instrumental, no pun intended, in making hip hop darker as some sort of clear Illuminati ritual. There's no evidence to support any of this, but this is what's thought, and there's loads of people that will tell you this. And another sort of indication that he's definitely into something dodgy, aside from the fact that he's got a beard, and genuinely people say he looks a bit like a wizard, so that means
Oh, that they are correct. He does look like a wizard.
He does look a bit like a wizard. Yeah, he also produced Danzig's debut album. Now, Glenn Danzig obviously used to be in the Misfits, and according to Christian groups, is an avowed left-hand past Satanist. And I think Danzig's second album is called like Lucifuge, and they have a horned skull as their logo. And so that's enough, really. Now, obviously, Glenn Danzig himself has repeatedly denied being a Satanist. For instance, telling In Music We Trust in 2006, I told you I wasn't a Satanist. The only thing I dig about Satan is he tells people to go fuck off and fights for individual freedom. He views Satan as a symbol of rebellion against oppressive organized religion, which he calls tunnel vision Christian viewpoint. Do you want to know another band who Rick Rubin, the obviously satanic person, produced?
Slipknot.
Well, did he do Did he do later Slipknot albums? Did he do Iowa?
Yes.
I thought Ross. Oh, right. Okay, fair enough. No,
the third one.
Oh, the third. What, Satanic
one.
Verses? Is that called?
I think so. Yeah.
Oh, there you go. That proves it.
Or it must have been second. He's done a couple.
Subliminal Verses.
He locked them in a haunted house.
Did he?
To record, yeah, and then he played pranks on them.
Oh, right, okay.
To scare the shit out of them. Yeah,
oh, nice.
It was like the story of it's mad.
I quite like him now, but again, this is all.
I like Rick Rubin. I think he's badass. He's an incredible producer, and my God, what a life!
Yeah, totally. He's done some Jay-Z albums. Did he do the Black Album by Jay-Z?
Yeah, Black Album.
Yeah. So that's obviously proves it. There's Illuminati and whatnot. But as I said, there's another band.
Into it, aren't we? Jay-Z and everything.
Well, again, it depends which bit you wish to look at, which will be a running theme in this as this goes on. But there was another band that has had several records produced by Rick Rubin that has a tangential connection to Ickonic, and strangely, this is never brought up.
I am drawing a blank here.
The Cult.
Oh.
The band The Cult, who have a name that invokes the idea of a cult, and whose guitarist goes out with Leilani Dowding, prominent conspiracy theorist and former employee of Ickonic. So the only point that we're trying to make with this is that basically it very much appears that a lot of this relies on cherry picking. Donovan should be problematic in regards to this because essentially he's got all these what could be considered red flags tying him to stalwarts of the industry, like legends, giants of the industry. And as we're about to discover, because of this industry insider, you cannot get to these places without selling your soul, being involved in the Illuminati, promoting certain things, being potentially mind controlled. So during Bob Dylan's trip to the UK, Bob Dylan, another Illuminati person, he has an Eye of Horus as a logo on some of his merchandise and is claimed to have sold his soul, according to conspiracy theorists. Anyway, in the spring of 1965, the British music press were making comparisons between Bob Dylan and between Donovan, and they presented it as a rivalry. Okay, so this is how famous Donovan is. Donovan is a rival to Bob Dylan. He's the Kanye West to his 50 Cent, if you will.
I was going to say the Kanye West to Taylor Swift.
Well, there you go. He's the Kanye West to numerous people. And so anyway, this actually prompted the Rolling Stones guitarist Brian Jones to pipe up. And they did become friends eventually. But Brian Jones said this: "We've been watching Donovan too. He isn't too bad a singer, but his stuff sounds like Dylan. His Catch the Wind sounds like Chimes of Freedom. He's got a song, Hey Tangerine Eyes, and it sounds exactly like like Bob Dylan's Mr. Tambourine Man." So Bob Dylan actually confronted him about stealing Mr. Tambourine Man. And Donovan said that, yeah, I stole it, but I thought that it was like a standard folk song. I didn't realize you wrote it.
Exactly. Yeah.
But again, like these are all things that if you really should be sort of piquing interest. Now, one of the things that we know, or that we're going to come to find, is that the Illuminati and the music industry are there to talk about salacious things, dirty, horrible things, sex and the like, and enjoying yourself. And on October 1966, the single Mellow Yellow was released by Donovan. This was the song was arranged by John Paul Jones of Led Zeppelin, and it has an uncredited backing vocal from Paul McCartney.
Wow.
Exactly. So again, like, you know, these are the things where for some reason we're skipping over this because Donovan is pretty much the hero of her life. So she doesn't bother with any of this. The song was rumored to be about smoking dried banana skins. Did you ever hear of this at school? If you would dry banana skins out in a certain way and then scrape the thing off and make it into a paste, you can roll it in a joint and it has mild hallucinogenic properties.
Yeah,
I even know someone that tried it. It doesn't work, obviously. It's bollocks. Like, but
you know someone.
Yeah.
You?
No, it wasn't me. It was a friend of.
So this is secondhand information. How can I trust it?
Well, that's true. That is very true. I mean, they did tell me that they'd tried it and that it was shit. It was a friend of my friend's older brother, and they did it for 8. They did the whole process. They had to dry it out in the airing cupboard and all of this. Waste of fucking time. Total waste of fucking time. But hey ho. Now, again, that was what it was supposed to be about. I think it has the lyric in it, smoking electric banana skins, but it's not about that. Now, according to Donovan's liner notes from Donovan's Greatest Hits, the rumor that one could get high from smoking dried banana skins was started by country Joe McDonald in 1966, and he'd actually heard the rumor before Mellow Yellow was released. So it doesn't come from the song Mellow Yellow. It's a massive coincidence. Do you want to know what smoking electric banana skins is actually a reference to?
Go on.
It's a vibrator. It's a yellow vibrator that was being sold at the time that was called an electric banana. Donovan said, I was reading a newspaper and on the back there was an ad for a yellow dildo called the Mellow Yellow. Oh, sorry, called the Mellow Yellow. Really, you know, the electric banana was right there and gave it away. And that's what the song is about. So Mellow Yellow, the song by Donovan, is actually about, which has John Paul Jones as the arranger and Paul McCartney as the backing vocals, is just an ode to a yellow vibrator that he saw advertised in the back of the newspaper. He said,
I did not see that coming.
He said in an interview with the NME, it's about being cool, laid back, and also the electrical bananas that were appearing on the scene, which were ladies' vibrators. So the following year, in 1967, he became really, really famous. That was when it sort of peaked. Okay. And if you wanted to get like, 1967 is the long, hot summer of rage. Okay. It's also when Manson got out of prison and the Summer of Love happened and all of this. Normally, we'd be suggesting, well, this guy can't have just got there on his own merit. The Illuminati must have pushed him to it. Wouldn't it be weird as well if, like, he was like deeply involved in an incident that has been sort of tied into Illuminati lore and pop culture? Like, for example, if in 1968, if he went to, you know, India, to the ashram of Maharishi Mahesh Yogi in Rishikesh with the Beatles and Mia Farrow and Mia Farrow's sister Prudence, who was the inspiration for Dear Prudence, and Mike Love, the wanker, who was the lead singer from the Beach Boys. So that famous trip to India that the Beatles went on, Donovan was on it. Wow. And it was on that trip that he taught Lennon and McCartney how to do the finger picking technique on guitar. And it was there that they wrote Dear Prudence, which is about Mia Farrow's sister, Mia Farrow, who appeared in Rosemary's Baby, which was shot at the Dakota Building, where John Lennon was later murdered. Possibly by the CIA, possibly by somebody under mind control, possibly by an obsessed fan. The Beach Boys were connected to Charles Manson because Manson actually recorded albums at Brian Jones's house and was on Brother Records, or was offered a contract through Brother Records. and actually wrote a few songs. Never Learn Not to Love was one of his. So again, normally in the conspiracy world, all of those things would be like red flags against Donovan's character. But for some reason, again, we're never going to look at those. We're just not. There's a couple of things that, again, if I was still in my conspiracy mindset, would be even more damning than that. In 2019, Donovan released a song called an album called Eco Song. This is an album of songs with an ecological theme. Do you want to know who the inspiration for his 2019 album? It's a concept album about the climate and such like that, the ecology. Do you want to know who it is? Go have a guess.
It's got to be Greta, right?
It's a fucking concept album about Greta Thunberg, yeah. Donovan, Coco's dad, has got an album that's inspired by Greta Thunberg that he wanted to adapt into a live stage show rock opera. And he was only prevented from doing this by COVID. Now, again, in the conspiracy world, Greta Thunberg is considered
the anti-hero.
Well, yeah. Do you know that Peter Thiel genuinely suggested that she might be the Antichrist?
Yes. I'd listen to that Behind the Bastards episode.
Yeah, like absolutely insane. So yeah, again, this should be a bit of a red flag. Now, the thing is, when we're talking about Illuminati in the music industry, what it really boils down to a lot of the time is it comes from a Christian perspective. And we are going to talk about the origin of this. We're going to talk about all of the artists, like trust us. You're going to know more about that. You're certainly going to know more about it than fucking these two do by the end of this series. We're going to touch on absolutely everything. But it's a Christian thing. So usually like it's things like devil horns, references to the devil, anti-Christian iconography and such like that, which is seen as an indication, a strong indication that this person is probably in the Illuminati. Donovan identifies as a pagan. Yeah, so he was raised Protestant, but he left the religion after reading Lao Tzu Zen and Celtic mythology as a teenager. So he's got this personal belief system that combines Celtic mythology, Buddhism, and goddess worship. During a 2022 interview with Variety, he said, "Every other song of mine celebrates the goddess. She is Mother Nature, and we've been placed in this extraordinary position, almost on the edge of extinction, by this totally overly male view that every resource, every river, every breeze, every cloud, every metal in the land should be raped and pillaged and sold as a commodity." Now, again, that should be a huge, huge red flag in the conspiracy world. Like, the mother goddess Gaia is seen as Queen Semiramis, is it? It's basically it's absolute Babylon worship. You can see this in the conspiracy world. They'll say that things like the Statue of Liberty, the woman that's holding the torch, you know, on Columbia, thank you. These are all references to the goddess Semiramis, and so that's one of the sort of beefs that they have with ecology and climate change and stuff like that, that it's Gaia worship, that it's worshipping the goddess, that essentially it's paganism, which in their mind is Satanism disguised as concern for the planet or whatever.
I'd also add that they throw images of Mary in there.
Yeah.
And also ISIS is also the same thing.
And Easter and Ishtar and all of that shit. Basically, like anything where it's a
all
woman.
of the woman goddesses.
Yeah.
Well, obviously, woman goddesses.
Yeah. For some reason, modern Christians have got a real problem with that, even when it's Mary sometimes. So anyway, all of this is completely ignored. And it turns out that Coco is an artist. She's got a couple of exhibitions of her paintings with Donovan. She's also into sculpture. She's a musician. She likes writing and being creative. I presume poetry and short stories and things like that. And she moved to Florence to be a successful artist, but COVID seems to have got in the way. And this made her think, do I want to be a success in such a system that is clearly corrupt and clearly something sinister going on with it? It's nothing to do with the fact that she couldn't get any work. It was something that she came to with her own mind. So Garth says, so yeah, absolutely. When did you start to realize, in terms of obviously with the whole COVID lockdown and the world going mad, it's still mad, isn't it? But that obviously opened your eyes in a different way. And I'd just like to jump in at this point and point out that Gareth's dad thinks that he's a reincarnation of Christ, that the moon is fake, that Saturn broadcasts reality, and that lizards run the planet. Anyway, but it's still mad, isn't it? But that obviously opened your eyes in a different way. But in terms of music, and I guess, you know, Hollywood, just the arts in general, when did you start to realize that maybe there were some dark undertones to that industry? Well, I always knew of the dark undertones because my mother always told me of all the crazy stories about how she grew up. And there's lots of mental illness and a lot of sick and sort of perverted individuals that are within these spheres of entertainment. She doesn't elaborate on this, and I was annoyed because that sounded interesting. But anyway, so I always knew about that ever since I was a young child, which is why my mother tried to keep me safe from all of that. But I kind of, when I was 14 or 15, I started listening to System of the Down, which they used to sing about how the system is fucked, basically. And like, I have mixed thoughts about this. Because,
I started giggling at this point.
Yeah, because System of a Down, like, they try, bless, but they've always, like, I know this is going to sound like terribly, oh, can you see Texas?
Don't you dare badmouth them.
I think they're awesome, but I do think that essentially they're like the Ladybird's book of shit is bad when it comes to politics. Like, they're not,
yeah.
Like, their political stance is essentially anti-war, anti-imperialism, the criticism of government corruption in the prison industrial complex. In that song, they're trying to build a prison, and recognition of the Armenian genocide. They do have some supports of like human rights issues and stuff like that. But like, again, I mean, fair enough, it's an entry point and stuff like that. But again, they always just struck me as a sort of like, shit is bad, yeah. Like, you know, bad stuff is bad, and that's it. Like, it wasn't really that particularly complicated. Although latterly, Serge Tankian, who's the singer, is a staunch opponent of Donald Trump. He's a supporter of Black Lives Matter, has continuously called for a ceasefire in Gaza. And again, they continue to advocate for sort of more awareness of the Armenian genocide. However, John Dollerman, the drummer, is actually a vocal supporter of Donald Trump. And he said that Donald Trump brings a little sanity back to the US. He has criticized the Black Lives Matter movement and claims that he's lost fans due to his controversial opinions. Now, again, I really like System of a Down. Like, we're not going to shit on System of a Down. System of a Down are awesome. They towards the sort of hypnotized, mesmerized era, I saw them off the back of the first album and off the back of Toxicity and then off the back of Hypnotized, Mesmerized. And by that time, it was clear that Serge wanted to be anywhere but in that band. He was phoning it in so fucking hard. Like, but hey ho, what can you do?
Yeah, I've never seen them, but I do know one fun fact about them. Is they're a Christian band.
Really?
Really. That is actually how Serge describes the band.
Oh, well, do you want to know who else?
Crazy.
Do you want to know who else is it? Well, they're not a Christian band, but people would be surprised to learn that the lead singer is a devout Catholic. That we've mentioned them already.
Happy Mondays?
No, Slayer. Tom Araya from Slayer is Catholic, which kind of goes against this whole idea that they're this terrible satanic band. And and the links to Rick Rubin and all that. Yeah, it's a joke. They know what they're fucking doing. They did it because it sells records, essentially, and because they thought it was funny. But so anyway, Coco continues. And that's when I first developed my mistrust for the system as a whole when I was 14. And then when I was around 16, 17, I started reading a lot of esoteric literature and getting pretty deep into conspiracy theories.
I was thinking, bingo, this is where the seeds start getting planted.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And again, I'm being a bitch, but like that's essentially how we got into it. It
Really?
was it was counterculture, it was Jedi mind tricks, it was, you know, bands like that, Wu-Tang Clan talking about the mind control theory. Like, you know, you felt that it was punk rock. And at the time, conspiracy theories they were left-leaning, anti-establishment, anti-oppression. They're not that now. They're totally not that now. So although I'm being a bit of a bitch, I'm being a bit unfair, to be quite honest, because this is exactly what we did, to be quite honest. So she goes on, and this was back when the internet was still useful and you could find a lot of interesting information. So I really had access to all the things you could think of when it comes to conspiracy theories. I was reading all of it. And it wasn't really until a couple of years later that it started to spill into my own life, and I started to make connections about my own experiences and my family's experiences. So she's been on the internet. And she's involved herself in this thing that's a community that she wants to be involved in. And again, I'm not even criticizing it. It's exactly what we fucking did. It's what you do when you're into something that you like. You go, I want to be a part of that. Okay. That's why we both formed bands. That's why we both got into conspiracy theories and started like writing stuff, because we were interested in it. And so she's doing the same thing. But I would err on caution because, again, she's being pitched as an insider, somebody that has this intimate knowledge. Thus far, she's explained that actually she doesn't have this, and essentially, she's sort of read the same things that we've read. She's been on the same message boards that we went on and stuff like that. That's it, really, isn't it?
Yeah, she grew up in the countryside, and she has been on the internet.
Listening
That's what
to
I've learned from her
down.
so far.
Yeah, fair enough.